given a choice, would you prefer to become a robot or stay human? In 1955, science fiction writer Stanislav Lem wrote a play about Harry Jones, a racer who gradually replaces his body parts with expensive prostheses as he gets permanently injured when racing. Eventually, Harry accumulates a huge debt that he is unable to pay to the manufacturer, so the company sues him, asking the court to recognize Harry as its property, since he is now de facto a machine whose body parts are produced by the manufacturer. Nearly 70 years later, the question posed by this play is more relevant than ever. As our lives become increasingly digitized, when and where do we cross the line when we lose our autonomy and stop being humans? Machines are becoming increasingly smarter, and they will take over about half of our jobs in the next decade. We cannot compete with them in what they can do faster or better. So the only way for us to stay relevant is to nurture what makes us humans. Our ability to stay focused, to be creative, to feel compassion and empathy, to experience our bodies and connection to nature, and ultimately to use our free will and consciousness to make choices, even though sometimes these are poor choices. But the paradox is that we do the opposite. Instead of behaving like humans, we increasingly behave like computers. We reduce our roles to data generators for smart machines that become increasingly human-like, feeding on our data and experiences. Let's look at all those precious things that we're giving away to computers. First, our ability to stay focused. Unlike computers or animals, humans have executive attention, which helps us block out the distractions, pursue goals, make decisions, problem solve, regulate our emotions, so basically all these things that make us humans. But instead of practicing focus every day, we allow our devices to teach us to switch attention. An average worker gets interrupted approximately every 40 seconds when they work with technology, and half of these interruptions come through their own devices. In fact, the mere presence of your smartphones is already so distracting that it reduces your problem-solving abilities. In one experiment, scientists asked people to solve different puzzles and put their phones in different locations. Some had in the other room, some on the table, some in the pockets, some face down. The group that consistently performed better was the group that had their smartphones in the other room, although all smartphones were on silent on airplane mode. People just couldn't stop thinking about their smartphones otherwise. Humans are not good at switching attention. At work, this attention switching creates more workload, mental effort, fatigue, stress. Students who multitask on their computer while pretending that they're listening to a professor perform worse on tests. Lack of focus also costs cognitive abilities to our children. When parents are physically present with the child but distracted by their smartphone, children do not learn how to stay focused. Eventually, these distraction seconds accumulate, and such children later on have more problems learning a language or problem solving. So we need to prioritize focus at work, in our private lives, in education. If you're an employee, start by blocking deep focus time in your agenda and hide that smartphone in the other room. If you're a parent, leave all your devices by the front door and give your full attention to your kids when you are with them. When we sacrifice our focus, we also sacrifice our headspace. Unlike computers, a human brain is cyclical. Sometimes we are productive, but sometimes we need time and space to take a pause and digest information. It helps us be creative, among other things. And by creativity, I mean not necessarily painting or writing, but thinking outside of the box. When our brains are busy with meaningless or ruminating thoughts, the brain defaults to the least interesting, most obvious solution. In other words, if we expect employees to be instantly replying on Slack, monitor emails, jump from one Zoom meeting to another, and at the same time come up with bright ideas, we set them up for failure. Boredom and its sister creativity have been shown to stimulate, boredom and sister daydreaming have been shown to stimulate creativity, whereas instant gratification undermines it. So, when we give an iPad to a child the very moment that they start screaming, "Mommy, I'm bored," we actually teach them instant gratification instead of practicing creativity. Now, creativity is one of the superhuman protections against automation because jobs with variable tasks with the creative component are less likely to be automated. So how can we be more creative? Well, if you're a parent, get rid of the idea that your job is to entertain your kid 24/7 and teach them that boredom is okay. At work, we need to stop confusing busyness with productivity and let ourselves and others this time to really think about problems deeply and in a more creative way. Unlike computers, humans have emotions. And sometimes we need time and space and attention to better process and feel them. For example, such higher emotions as empathy, love, or compassion. They help us truly understand other people and connect to them, while our screens often disconnect us. When children are deprived of their screens for just 5 days, they become so much better at recognizing other people's emotions, which is a key to empathy. The more we allow our devices to mediate our social relationships, the shallower our relationships become. Over the last 40 years, the levels of empathy in the society globally have been going down. And although we spend on average 2.5 hours daily on social media, we have never felt lonelier. In fact, when a group of students limited their usage of social media to only 30 minutes per day, already in 3 weeks they reported far less loneliness and depression compared to those who continued fully indulging in social media. Heads up if you multitask when you're on a video call. Quite a few of us. In fact, statistically, it's at least 30% of us who do that, and some even manage to be at 2 video meetings simultaneously. It's true. When we even see the smartphone during the conversation, even if it's on the airplane mode, we still rate the conversation as less intimate and our conversation partner as less interested in us. So, why is it that instead of teaching empathy to employees or to kids, we actually invest money and time into teaching empathy to artificial intelligence or create robots that can feel pain? How about we all cut the time we spend on social media in half and perhaps use it to volunteer, maybe stay with an old lonely neighbor? Or, if that's too much, you could perhaps start with just giving your full attention to somebody you will meet this week or even today without simultaneously checking your Messenger, WhatsApp, or taking a picture, just to connect better. The more our lives are digitized, the less we are connected to the needs of our bodies. We gather lots of digital data about our bodies, but do we really experience them? No, actually, it's quite the opposite. We trust our devices to tell us when we need to go to sleep, if we need to walk more or drink. In fact, there is even an app that tells you when to go to pee during a movie break. True story. Human body is not created to sit for long hours in front of the screens. The World Health Organization says that sedentary lifestyle and physical inactivity is the fourth major risk factor for global mortality. But the more we use our devices, the less we move. In fact, compared to our ancestors, we move up to 70% less. We stare so much at our screens that by 2050, half of the world's population will be short-sighted. We simply do not exercise our eyesight and our eye muscle enough looking into the distance, just being most of the time indoors and focusing on our screens. Social media usage may disrupt our circadian rhythms, responsible for keeping us awake or putting us to sleep, and create the so-called social jet lag. So when we have an expectation that we are reachable to somebody, then we delay or shorten our sleep, which creates all sorts of metabolic immune system issues. So in short, instead of really supporting our bodies and our brains in the digital age, we behave like brains on the stick, adapting our bodies to technology. And this makes us not stronger, but weaker. What if we challenged ourselves to move much more, perhaps having more walk-in meetings at work or catching up with a friend for a walk instead of catching up in a cafe? My number one advice to parents who are concerned about their children's screen time is not to limit screen time, but rather get their children move more. And the research shows that children who move more and spend more time outside actually study much better. Which leads me to my next point. The more our lives are digitized, the less interested in nature we become. Now, nature is essential for humans. It helps us reduce our stress and restore our focus, our executive attention. After about 20 minutes of walking in nature, the level of cortisol, our stress hormone, goes down. And people who visit nature at least several times a week report more self-worth, greater life satisfaction, less anxiety, and more happiness. However, instead of experiencing nature directly, we do so through our screens more and more, perhaps Instagramming a sunset or watching a documentary about wildlife. An average pupil better knows the name of Pokemon than herbs or animals in their nearby park. In the UK, children spend twice as much time playing on their screens as playing outdoors. And 3 out of 4 kids spend less time outside than prison inmates. And while kids are interested in nature when they're young, as they grow up, their connection to nature drops dramatically. What happens there? You got it. It's the time when they get full access to their first smartphone and other devices. So how can we expect people to be conscious of the impact, of their impact on the environment, if they never see nature, just simply immersed in their devices? The only way to prevent or overcome the upcoming climate crisis is to remind ourselves that we are nature and build direct relationship with it from early age. What if instead of putting Wi-Fi in every remote corner of our parks, we prioritize them as spaces for personal reflection? What if instead of convincing people that virtual reality is the only way forward, we spend part of this marketing money on explaining people the impact of their digital behavior on the environment and their footprint? What if each of us chose to upgrade our smartphones less often, thus putting the pressure on manufacturers and phone carriers, mobile carriers, to be more sustainable? Free will and consciousness is the last frontier that we have as humans. But the more we share our data, the more power we give to algorithms to override our free will and make us act unconsciously. Amazon and Netflix, for example, already recommend to us what to buy or watch using their recommendation engine that runs on our data. Social media platforms make our behavior more predictable by showing us the content we're likely to engage with or that keeps us in our own bubble. Today, more and more decisions about humans are taken by the software. It already decides whether to give you a mortgage, promote or hire a person, or fire them, or put them into jail, depending on how likely the person is to commit a repeated crime. And this decision is based on a set of reasonably narrow parameters that have been crafted by someone without considering a wider context. So for the first time in human history, decision-making about humans is decoupled from consciousness. In other words, we're creating the system whereby sharing our data, we are giving away our power and choices to smart algorithms that have no morality, that make a lot of assumptions about you, and we don't fully understand how they make these decisions. By the way, even creators don't understand it well. We need to stop thinking that digital skills is about knowing how to create a Word file or put a like on a picture. Digital skills is about knowing how your data you're sharing, can be used to manipulate your opinion or make an automated decision about you, and what you can do to protect your choices, your free will, and those of your children. In Lem's play that I mentioned in the beginning, the company argues that Harry Jones, the racer, does not exist, since he lost all his human parts in accidents. And so he is now de facto a set of prostheses that fakes being a human. We may not be able to stop the progress of technology. However, it's up to each of us, as parents, consumers, workers, to define its progress. Every small choice we make every day about our digital behavior gets you one step closer to becoming a robot or reclaiming your humanity. Which choice will you make today?